Magandang araw! Welcome po sa ating channel. Dito sa Usapang Pinas, tatalakayin natin ng mga issue sa politika. At syempre kung gusto mo ng mga ganitong issue, pakisubscribe naman po ang ating channel. Salamat. Sa video na to, bumilibang maraming netizen na nakasubaybay sa oral arguments ng dinggi ng Korte Suprema. Ang petisyong kumikustyon sa legalidad ng 2024, 2025 at 2026 national budget, kung saan dito nabuko ang daan-daang bilyong pisong budget insertion na nangyayari sa Bicameral Conference Committee. Sa nasabing oral arguments, kini-question mismo ni Senior Associate Justice Marvic Leonen ang depensa ni Solicitor General Berberabe ng panindigan ng gobyerno na sa kapangyarihan ng executive and ang legislative ang pagpasa ng taunang budget at kasama dito ang mga unprogrammed funds. Ngunit tulad ng petisyon, iginiit ni Leonen na walang malinaw na basihan ang mga ginagawa ng Kamara at Senado patungkol sa kung saan ba talaga napupunta ang bilyones na pondo, dahilan para usisain ng publiko ang bilyong pisong halaga na nakalaan para dito. Napansin din ng mga netizen na nakapanood ng oral argument na tila matapos ibuko ni Justice Leonen ang mga loophole sa naturang unprogrammed funds, tila na pa-oo na lamang ang Solicitor General sa mga siniwalat ni Leonen. Eto, panoorin natin.
So there is this magnitude of our debt servicing. There is our deficit. Okay. So the question that we want to ask you is, when there is an excess revenue, where should it go first? Legally and constitutionally, or is there no standard? When there is excess revenue, should it go to program, unprogram, and because you created a new one, automatic appropriation?
Your Honor, the sources of funds for the program are different from the sources of funds of the unprogrammed appropriations.
But the triggers in the unprogrammed section includes any excess in non-tax revenues for 2025 and 2026. And in 2024, it was both tax and non-tax revenues. Any excess. It did not qualify.
Yes, yes, Your Honor. For the first trigger, on excess revenue collections in any one of identified non-tax revenue from its corresponding original targets as reflected in the BESF. So, meaning, for this first trigger, Your Honor, then the priority will be once it only exceeds the source of financing for the program, then it will trigger for the unprogrammed appropriation.
Sa madalit salita, sinabi natin kanina na may deficit. Ibig sabihin, yung planadong expenditures, pasensya na Ilocano ako pero nagtatagalog ako. So yung gastusin natin ay mas malaki kaysa sa kikitahin natin. Yun yung nakalagay na sa program. Na kahit sa programmed expenses, mas malaki na yung gagastusin natin kaysa yung kikitahin natin. At nakalagay doon sa ating BESF na kapag merong additional na income, hindi maliwanag, sa pakiwari ko, hindi maliwanag kung gagastusin yan muna doon sa program or pwede nang gastusin palagi doon sa, or pwede nang gastusin doon sa unprogram. Di naman palagi, pero pwede nang gastusin sa program. In other words, my question is there anything in statute or in the Constitution which compels in the budget execution that whenever there is excess income, and I will now go to excess income in non-tax revenues because that is the trigger in 25 and 26, that it should first be spent for program before unprogram?
It is only in the GAA, Your Honor.
So, in other words, there is no constitutional frame where it says, finish the unprogram first before you can go to the unprogram, except the case of Araulio, but it in a general sense, and I would even submit a bit of obiter, correct?
Correct, Your Honor. But the Araulio, based on our position, is premised on a different GAA, and the articulation of the triggers in the Araulio case are different from the articulation of the triggers in the 2024, 2025 to 2026 GAAs. And also in the Araulio case, there was a subsequent motion for reconsideration that was filed, and it actually clarified that you don't have to wait for the whole year to ascertain whether there was excess, because otherwise then there will never be funding for the unprogrammed appropriation. So in the motion for reconsideration, the court clarified that based on a quarterly report by the DBM, there can be a determination of whether the target has been met.
Okay, just to be clear, I will flash now the triggers in the unprogrammed funds. Okay, 2024 was quite unique. There was a subparagraph D. And subparagraph D is now non-existent. It is null and void. It was stricken down in the PhilHealth case. Okay, so we are left with the first trigger. And the first trigger, if you notice, it says coming from the excess revenue. I have to look at my copy because I cannot also see. Okay, so the first trigger is excess revenue collection in or any one of the identified non-tax revenue sources from the corresponding revenue. If you compare it with letter A of 2025, same. Compare with letter with 2026. Identified non-tax revenue sources from its corresponding revenue collection targets as reflected in the BESF. Then in the letter B, new revenue collections or those arising from new taxes or non-tax sources. Also letter B, also letter B of 2026. Approved loans, the difference is letter D. It does not exist, correct?
Correct.
Do you notice any other differences? In 2025 and 2026, excess revenue collections in total revenues was removed. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
As well as fund balance of GOCC.
Correct,
Yes.
Your Honor.
This is the only provision in the GAA which controls where excess revenues, new tax sources are to be spent. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So there is nothing in the GAA which allows the DBM and the President to allow a SARO to be used immediately to pay for unprogrammed appropriations. Correct? In other words, when there is excess revenue, nakalagay dito excess revenue. So pwedeng gamitin na kaagad sa unprogrammed appropriations. Tama?
Correct, Your Honor.
So, ibig sabihin, the category of programmed and unprogrammed does not really have a material difference. Because in the interpretation of government, pwede kapag merong excess na pera, excess na revenue, na hindi naka-earmark, na pwedeng gamitin na ito kaagad sa unprogrammed funds. Tama?
Tama po, Your Honor.
And that was why Senator Drilon was actually proposing that we have to be clearer. And actually also Secretary Butch was also saying that, and of course Secretary Jokno was also saying, you have to discipline all of this so that it's very clear that it should be in program funds, correct? And constitutionally it matters because once you transfer a PAP, a program and project and program coming from program funds, okay, and you transfer it to unprogrammed funds, and you want to fund it immediately, you can increase the amount of unprogrammed funds, like in 2024, you can transfer funds there so that it continuously increase, and the fiscal space created in the program funds you can reallocate. And then you can have the chance of still having it funded. And in the interpretation of government, you do not violate 25(1) because to you, the limit is the program. Correct?
Correct, Your Honor, because again, in the analogy that we attempted to include, that we attempted to make in regard to programmed and unprogrammed, is in number one, the prioritization of the programs. So if you put a PAP, a project,
Madam Solgen, how do you say that it's a priority? So we have deficit. Ibig sabihin, mas malaki yung gagastusin natin kaysa yung nakukuha na kinikita natin. Pero kapag lumaki yung kita natin, what you are saying is, there is nothing in the GAA, and I do not see anything in the GAA, which says you have to fund the program first before you go to unprogram. Is there?
okay. Yung pong, kaya ko po sinasabi na priority, sapagkat yung sa NEP pa lang, ikinocommit na po ng executive na kung ako ay magtatrabaho at ganito ang mga economic factors, kinocommit ko na meron akong kikitain ng, let's say, 1 billion pesos. Priority po yun sapagkat kinomit na ni executive. Kaya yung mga nakalista doon, pagka na-meet na po yung targets, then they will finance the program. So, the fact that it is put in the unprogrammed...
To be clearer, Madam Solgen, the program funds has expenditures, correct?
Correct po.
The revenue to cover these expenditures are lower than the program funds, correct?
Correct po.
So in other words, there is a deficit, may kulang. Tama?
Tama po.
And sinasabi ng pamahalaan natin, kikitahin namin to. Sana lumaki yung income namin. Sana, magkaroon ng dividendo sa PhilHealth or whatever, or some GOCC na umakyat to. Okay. But here in the provision in unprogrammed fund, it says, excess revenue of non-tax sources can be used for unprogrammed funds immediately. There is no control. There is nothing here that says you have to spend first in program. There is no footnote, and we searched the GAA as best as we could, and perhaps you can ask your own staff to take a look at it. There seems to be nothing which says there is an excess. You have to spend it first for the program. That's why I'm saying, even if in terms of symbolism, program seems to be the priority of the president, when Congress puts it in unprogrammed, there is a possibility that there can be a SARO to be issued in order to release funds for the unprogrammed funds, correct?
Your Honor, our interpretation of the total revenues here are the total revenues that have been set as the target.
Yes, ganun pa rin. Ibig sabihin, yung tinarget na income and targeted expenditures, may deficit pa rin. May pagkukulang yung kikitahin batay sa BESF mismo. And I asked two of the experts already, and in fact the presentations, there is a program deficit. And the program deficit will be funded by non-tax sources and debts. Pero ang sinasabi ko ngayon, nasaan dito sa GAA natin yung provision na nagsasabi, pag meron kang bagong kita, gamitin mo muna sa program. Is there in the law, in the GAA law? And my next question is, should it be in the reading of our Constitution that that cannot be done? That when the government commits program funds, that it cannot use whatever it earns immediately for unprogrammed, because your concept of unprogrammed is standby. Ano hong ibig sabihin ng standby? May mauuna sa kanya. Ibig sabihin, halimbawa sa isang pamilya, sasabihin na mauunang kakain yung mga maliliit na bata kung kulang yung pagkain natin. Therefore, yung mga matatanda naka-standby, hindi sila yung mauuna. So, my next question is, was there any expenditure in 2024, 2025, where the unprogrammed came before the program funds?
I would, may I confer with my team?
Yes.
Your Honor.
Meron, di ba?
Yes, Your Honor. My team confirms that.
I am confident about that because that was presented to us during the PhilHealth oral arguments, that there were expenditures that came first from the unprogrammed rather than the program. Okay, now, before you spend for unprogrammed, there has to be excess, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
And therefore, by the way, what is a SARO? What does SARO mean? Just so we are clear about the abbreviations that we are using.
Special
Special allotment
po.
release order, correct?
Special allotment release order.
So it is an order coming from DBM to the Treasury to release money, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, for every SARO coming for an unprogrammed item, must there be a certification of excess income?
Yes, there must be a certification of the presence of A, B, or C.
Okay. Because, can you assure this court that every expenditure in 24 and 25, because that is at issue now, has come from a certification accompanying a SARO?
That's theoretically the case,
Okay.
Your Honor.
So, can I ask the government to submit to the court copies, a listing of all the SAROs from the authorizing release from the unprogrammed, as detailed as possible, meaning to say not the cumulative, but all the SAROs, you can list it down and give us digital copies. And for each of the SAROs, please match it or correspond it to a certificate of income or whatever the Treasury issues, certification of excess income or 1, 2, or 3.
We
And,
will comply, Your Honor.
Can you comply by next week so that the justices who will interpolate can have that as a resource also?
We
Correct?
will comply, Your
But as far as we are concerned right now, you admit that there is nothing in the law or in the Constitution that says that whenever there is excess income, the budget execution is compelled to first do program.
Okay. May I clarify, Your Honor? So again, because in my understanding of the supporting financial sources, because they are defined and they are not commingled. So meaning if the sources of funds for the program are A, B, C, D, the sources of funds for the unprogrammed are E, F, G, or maybe A plus 1 in terms of the first. And so that's why, to me, there should be no other requirement to be found in a law or in any provision in the GAA because the sources are different.
Okay. You say that it's specific. But if you look at 2024 trigger, it actually says excess revenue collections in the total revenues. Meaning to say, basta't excess dun sa total. Okay? Or in any one of the identified non-tax revenue sources from its corresponding revenue collection as reflected in 2024. Noong 2025 and 2026, they removed the total and they just put there excess revenue in any one of the identified non-tax revenue sources. Meaning to say, for the identified non-tax revenue sources, it was almost earmarked. Kapag may increase, any increases there was already earmarked for unprogrammed.
Correct, Your Honor.
So you are earmarking funds that are excess meaning to say good collections of government, good performance of a GOCC, you have earmarked that for unprogrammed, not for the program.
Correct, Your Honor.
And yet
Which
you
is-
say, the position of government is that Congress cannot exceed the ceiling of the President's budget, but it can exceed the unprogrammed, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's why it was 303 billion pesos, correct? Exceeding.
Correct, Your Honor.
So if I were a member of the House, and I will not certainly become a member because I cannot win any election, but if I were a member of the House, bakit ko ilalagay sa program? Ilalagay ko na lang sa unprogram. Sigurado pa yan, kapag may excess revenue, mauuna ako, hindi yung program. And I can put anything in unprogram so long as the leadership or the BICAM will accept. That's why it was a jump of about 400 billion from the agreements of the House and the Senate, and then bicameral increase it by 400. I would rather go there because I can add everything that I want in the unprogram. So goodbye fiscal discipline.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Um,
Where did I make a mistake?
Okay. In assuming that the executive or the Congress, actually, it's like everyone has is gaming the mechanism. It's as if we are thinking that why would the Congress not put the priority programs in the unprogrammed appropriations, because that will for sure be funded, which is incorrect. Because if the government...
You have asked a question that I will ask from someone coming from Congress. Why would they choose unprogrammed from program? Or why is it that they would rather move some of the program to the unprogrammed? So it creates fiscal space in the program because there is a limit, correct? And
Correct.
therefore, they can make inclusions. I'm trying to avoid the word. Inclusions, insertions, etc. into the program. That's a theoretical possibility. I'm not saying that happened. But what I'm saying is you create the fiscal space and then you move it to by moving it to unprogrammed, and then you can put whatever you want in the program. Okay, that's one possibility. Okay, now, of course, we do not assume the worst. But then it is our role to actually put the guardrails so that this will not happen. And therefore, to prove that I am wrong, therefore, that is why I'm requiring, were there expenditures from the unprogrammed that came before expenditures from the program? Second, were there expenditures from the unprogrammed that did not have the, the certificate of excess coming from the, no less than the Treasury, because it is the only one that can determine whether there is excess income, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so we will require that of you. By the way, how do you get a SARO? A special allotment release order. There is the regular releases. And the chief, for myself under the SET, si Chief Ben under the HRET, we have that authority. Once in a while when I am acting chief, I issue a release order for benefits of the staff, always. But in any case, that's the point. There's a regular release order, correct? Special allotment release orders are special, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Who releases that?
The note here says, please ask BBM. Well, BBM is the...
DBM, okay. And before the DBM releases, this is the President's budget, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Must the DBM always clear with the Office of the President that it will release a special allotment release order? You see, the DBM is part of an economic management team, correct?
Correct.
And therefore, they have to make sure, as you said in your opening statement, they have to make sure that the funding is within their entire plan. They have a Philippine Development Plan, correct?
Correct, Your
So
Honor.
is it the practice that the DBM issues it, this SARO, because it wants to?
Okay, I've gotten information. Some secretaries said that they need the president, and some say that it's within the power of the Secretary of DBM.
Okay, for this administration. Just so we know, because we are about to come to a ruling with respect to how it is. And if it is only an alter ego lang pala nagre-release ng SARO, then that will weigh heavily on us. Because at least if it's the president, we will know that we are dealing with a co-equal entity. And the president, of course, comes with a lot of respect in this courtroom.
For the current secretary, in our briefing, he said that he confers with the president.
Okay, for every SARO, therefore, that is also with the consent of the president.
It should be.
Okay. And of course, you're going to give us the SARO. Are SAROs only for unprogrammed funds?
I don't think so, Your Honor.
Yes. Anyway, please cover the process of the SARO also in your memoranda, because that is very important for us to be able to identify. Okay, thank you, Madam Solgen. May I ask Dr. Jokno?
Thank you, Your Honor, for now.
Okay. Madam Solgen, just to be clear, for every SARO, there needs to be consent by the President.
Based on what Secretary Rolly told us, that for the release in the unprogrammed appropriations, he has to get the alignment of the President.
And for the Budget Secretary before the current Budget Secretary?
I do not have that information now, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Please be ready, because I am sure the next interpellator after me will ask you again.
Yes, we will prepare, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ayun, alanganin po ang mga sagutan, no? Ano po masasabi mo sa issue na to? Paki-comment naman po sa comment section. At dito na nagtatapos. Kung nagustuhan mong video na to, huwag kalimutang i-like, i-share at mag-subscribe. Thank you for watching. Abangan ang mga susunod na videos natin. Thank you and goodbye.